Here's a quick look at what's been making news here in Japan and elsewhere in Asia. 4 Hong Kong pro-democracy activists have been turned away from the U.S. consulate after seeking asylum. A local newspaper says this happened Tuesday afternoon. Police say they arrested 3 former members of a group calling for Hong Kong's independence. They say that violated the national security law. Local media report one of the suspects was detained near the consulate Tuesday morning after trying to seek asylum. Consulate officials declined to comment. Members of Thailand's ruling party have proposed setting up a committee to discuss how to resolve political protests that have continued for months. The panel would comprise lawmakers and young demonstrators. The proposal was made during an extraordinary session of Parliament held Monday and Tuesday. Opposition lawmakers dismissed the idea as an attempt to buy time. The coronavirus pandemic has caused the operator of a major Japanese airline to rack up a record loss. ANA Holdings expects a net deficit of $4.8 billion for the year ending next March. The company will ask employees to take voluntary retirement, implement annual pay cuts averaging 30%, and get rid of more than 30 planes as part of a restructuring plan. India and the U.S. have signed a pact to boost military cooperation. This is seen as an attempt to contain China's growing maritime activities. The agreement was signed on Tuesday at a meeting of foreign affairs and defense chiefs in the Indian capital of New Delhi. The pact enables the U.S. to provide India with sensitive data such as images taken by military satellites. We're broadcasting from NHK in Tokyo. You're listening to Asian View on NHK World Japan. The whole world is waiting to see who wins the U.S. presidential election. NHK interviewed Wan Iwei, a specialist in international affairs at China's Renmin University, and Ian Bremmer, an American political scientist, to discuss what the outcome will mean for Sino-U.S. relations.
Professor Wan, how interested are ordinary people in China in the U.S. presidential election?
Well, definitely the Chinese are very keen on the campaign because Trump and Biden all talk about China. However, the most of the Chinese do not expect that China-U.S. relations will change so much. If Trump re-elected, will continue push China and play the card with China. And if Biden win the election, Biden also think about putting the human rights card and then press more on China.
What changes have you seen in the image of U.S. lately in China?
Well, definitely, the U.S. image in China dropped dramatically because President Trump. Not just his American First policy, because as China as a scapegoat, even a scapegoat of the American domestic political system. Actually, Plain China cannot solve the problems because this is the new world. This is a digital, this is industrialization 4.0 and 5G. So they cannot accept China as the non-Western, non-U.S. alliance to take a leading role in the industrialization.
Dr. Bremer, are you worried about the way the decoupling going?
I'm a little worried about it. I mean, I don't think that we are heading into a Cold War between the U.S. and China because the reality is there's massive economic interdependence between the two countries, and no matter what we say to each other, that's going to continue.
Right. Professor Wan, are you worried that an accident might lead to a military conflict with China and the U.S.?
Well, of course, I think that people identify China-U.S. as a so-called new Cold War scenario. I don't think so because Soviet Union and the U.S., they can have proxy war, maybe Korea Peninsula or somewhere else. But China and the U.S., there's no such kind of scenario. So difficult to have a direct confrontation, either in the Taiwan Strait or in the South China Sea.
Dr. Bremer, in order to lower the tension, what will the U.S. need to do?
Well, one thing that a Biden administration will do will be to broaden out the level of high-level engagement between the entire American and Chinese bureaucracies. So I think a Biden administration would try to create greater guardrails with the relationship, and I think that's, generally speaking, to be welcome.
The rest of the discussion can be seen on our debate program, Global Agenda.